Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. I noticed that we give you $10 on the way in and no one's left. Wondering what might happen next. Today's parable, as you've heard, is the first part of Luke 16. Does anyone know what Luke 16 comes after? Luke 15, that's right. That's how our Bible has been arranged, very conveniently. Luke 15, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. So that's what's just happened. And then after what we're looking at is Lazarus and the rich man. These are a whole lot of parables. Parables which are sometimes called earthly stories with heavenly meaning. But that runs the risk of us over-spiritualizing them, making them things to think about, things to dwell on, things to ponder that are completely disconnected from the actual things that we do. So we can also think of them as earthy stories with heavy meaning, and that's where I want to go today. Leon Morris was a 20th century Australian theologian, was the principal at Ridley College for some time, and he somewhat famously says about this that this is notoriously one of the most difficult parables to interpret. Hence why I was asked to come up. It's difficult to interpret because it's not immediately obvious what the moral of the story is. And I guess what I'm wanting to say today is that there isn't just a moral of the story, otherwise that would have been written there. But this is a story that makes us think. It's got different layers, different levels, different meanings, not just for academic debate, but it pulls in kind of our street smart thinking and the realities of life and flexes all those different muscles. And today I think it will flex different muscles for each of you, and you might go away with different conclusions. I'm going to do my best to not present conclusions, but just to give you some different framing that helps you with that. If you've got access to a Bible with you, I encourage you to open it up now, because that will keep me true. You can keep checking what I'm saying. We're mostly going to work from the NIV, but we're also going to hear the passage one time from the PEV, the Plain English Bible. Plain English version of the Bible. You choose whatever version you want, and feel free to test the things that I say against what you see in there. Because we're going to hear it 3 times, but you might also want to be able to refer back to it. You might find that there's a subtitle in your text. Kay's given us a few of them. I don't know how often the word shrewd comes up in your life, aside from when you're reading this parable. I think it's a bit unhelpful in terms of giving us some meaning, so we're going to try to come up with some different subtitles, because that's just something that someone along the way has added in to help us kind of get a sense of what's going on here. But for a parable that's potentially the most difficult to interpret, I don't think it's helpful for us to have a little subtitle there that leads our conclusions. And what I want you to take away today is not how nice my pants are looking or the things, my opinions and the things that I kind of threw out and said, well, this is what I think. But the text and the things that the text says to you as you wrestle with it. I'm going to invite you to talk with some people around you at different points if you'd like to, or you can do that yourself. Keep referring back to the text, but we'll have 3 little moments to do some wrestling in whatever form is going to be helpful, so that you can be listening for what Jesus is saying to you through the words written in our Bibles today. And the big question will be, what will you do with the money that you control? So after each of the 3 interpretations that I'm going to offer, there are 3 questions for you to reflect on. The first will be, what do you like about that interpretation? Why does that sit comfortably with you? The second will be, what's uncomfortable about that? Why do you disagree? Or what do you find challenging about that? And then the third thing will be to sit with both of those and to dwell, what's the invitation for me from this one? Is this something that I resonate with and that gives me comfort? in a way that I need it? Is this something that challenges me and pushes me in a way that I might need it? That's for you to discern today, whether you are feeling afflicted and needing comfort or whether you are feeling comfortable and needing some affliction. So I'm going to invite up Deb for our first interpretation, which, just for visual clarity, is going to occur over here in the south, and then I'll come and give some comments. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Brendan. So Luke 16, verses 1 to 15. Jesus told his disciples, "There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses.' So he called each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' 900 gallons of olive oil,' he replied. The manager told him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. Then he asked the second, 'And how much do you owe?' 1,000 bushels of wheat,' he replied. He told him, 'Take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So, if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight."
Thank you, Deb. Okay, so interpretation number one. Now, on the back of your money, which is not legal tender, but we'll put that aside, you'll see that I've done a little fill in the blanks thing there. So I'm going to suggest for this first interpretation that our subtitle could be "The Generous, Remorseful and Humble Manager." We'll put that one up on the screen. There you go. So feel free if you want to fill that in. If you don't have a pen, I've got a box of them up here. I haven't thought through how to connect that problem and that solution. Maybe someone will join the dots there and pass a pen around. If you'd like, fill in on the back of your money the little subtitle for that section. Thanks, Dave. So, interpretation number one: generous, remorseful, and humble manager. So, for me, as a middle-class citizen of the West who's always learnt to be a nice Christian, this one makes a fair bit of sense to me. This is good. So the manager was middle class and educated. And his role was to ensure that his boss had a profit in managing all the financial affairs. The manager also needed to take his own cut so that he was getting paid for his work. And then he also had to make sure that he could do that without bleeding the lower class completely dry and have society collapse all around. So he's balancing these different things, the different groups, the different people that needed to be making a profit. And he might have just made a mistake. He carried the wrong number somewhere or spilt some of the olive oil on his accounts. Or he might have been embezzling and then realised, but either way, he realised that he'd made an error and he's caught out. And so, for the sake of this interpretation, we assume that he takes off his commission and lets his master take the credit for lowering the debts. So when he's writing down these debts, he's actually foregoing the part that was going to be his cut because he's realised he's made an error, but he's letting his boss take the credit for reducing these debts. Generous, remorseful, and humble manager. And so in the passage it says, use your money to make friends, which he's done. In the following story that comes after this, the rich man doesn't use his money to make a friend with Lazarus, who's begging at the gates, covered in sores, going hungry. The rich man ignores him. And after the rich man dies and he's being tormented, he calls out for help, but he isn't listened to. He didn't use his money to make friends, but our generous, remorseful, humble manager did. Was he expecting some form of repayment? Does that make it less generous? I'm not sure on that one. In verse 13 it says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is about the incompatibility of the mammon system and the manna system. The mammon system being money, the money of this world, the ways that we use capital, compared to the manna economy that we see in Exodus, which is that there will be enough every day. You don't store up extra, everyone will have what they need. So mammon versus manna, two different systems of economy. And that verse doesn't say that you shouldn't serve two masters, it says that you cannot. The Jesuit theologian John Hawley says that we read the gospel as if we had no money and we spend our money as if we knew nothing of the gospel, because we don't talk that much about the concrete reality of money in our first world churches. So that's what we're going to do some wrestling with. So this is the moment now where you can think about this interpretation, read the passage again in your Bible if you want, talk to the person next to you if you want. The three questions were, what do you like about that one? What's comfortable and encouraging? What's challenging about that? And then if you manage to come to what's your conclusion from that? What's the invitation for you? And if you want, you can write that in the first box on the back of your money. If you want to do it some other way, that's okay. I'm not going to come and check up on you. I've thrown in my bit, now it's over to you. What do you think of that interpretation? I'll give you a couple of minutes. Okay. Pause your conversations. You can carry on chatting soon, but I'm going to introduce to you the second reading and the second interpretation. This reading comes from just the audio from Zoe. This is the PEV. See if it says something different to you. See if you like it. See what it says.
Then Jesus told his followers another picture story. He said, there was a rich man that had a big business, and he had another man working in his office. That other man was his manager. He looked after the rich man's money. Somebody told the rich man, look, your manager is wasting your money. So that boss said to his manager, they tell me you were not doing your job properly, so I'm going to sack you, and you will not have a job anymore. Now write down everything you have done with my money, and after that you have to go. The manager thought to himself, "Soon I will not have a job. What will I do to get money for my food? I'm not strong enough to do hard work like digging the ground, and if I ask people for money all the time, I will feel shame. What can I do? I know what to do. I will do something to get people to like me, so that after I lose my job, they will look after me, and they will let me live in their homes." There were some people that borrowed things from that rich man, and they didn't give anything back to him yet. So the manager called those people into the office. He asked one man, "What did you borrow from my boss?" That man said, "I borrowed 100 drums of oil." The manager said, "We can change that. Here is the paper that has the numbers on it. I'll let you change it right now. Make it 50 drums of oil." Then the manager asked the next man, "What did you borrow from my boss?" Then that man said, "I borrowed 100 bags of flour." The manager said, "We can change that. Here is the paper that has the numbers on it. I'll let you change it right now. Make it 80 bags of flour." That manager was cheating his boss, but his boss thought, "This man is a liar and a cheat, but he is smart too. He has done something that will help him get his food later." Then Jesus said, "You know the people that don't care about God, but only care about the things in this world. They are smart with the things of this world. God's people are not so smart with the things of this world." This is what you can learn from that story. Use your money now to help people that need money. And then later, after you die and you haven't got any money, God will say, "Good on you, come and live with me forever." Then Jesus said, "If people can trust you with little things, they can trust you with big things too. If you cheat with little things, you will cheat with big things too." So if you cheat when you handle money and other things of this world, God will not trust you to look after his very special things. And if you don't look after other people's things properly, God will not give you things for yourself. You see, you can't work for two bosses at the same time. If you try to do that, you will like one boss and work properly for him, and you will not like the other boss, and you will not work properly for him. You see, you can't have God as your boss and money as your boss, both at the same time. Some of the Pharisee mob were there. They were strong for the Jewish law, and they loved money a lot too. So when they heard Jesus teach those things, they laughed at him. Then Jesus told them, "You mob want everyone to think you are good, but God knows that you are really like, and he knows that you think inside your heads. You see, there are things that people reckon are important, but God thinks those things are rubbish." Then Jesus told his followers another picture story. He said, there was a rich man that had a big business.
Okay, number 2, interpretation. Yes, well done, Zoe. If we had all day, I feel like we could do a fill the blanks and you get a prize if you guess the word. But I'll just tell you what I'm suggesting we call this for number 2 is the selfish, dishonest and proud manager. The opening of this parable starts in a pretty similar way to the prodigal son story. You know, the one where the younger son squanders money and lives recklessly. So, as opposed to before, this time let's assume that the manager is not just foregoing his own commission, but is stealing knowingly from the master. But then Jesus commends him for this? Well, no. If you look carefully, Jesus observes the dishonesty. Jesus observes the cunning. But it's the boss that commends the shrewdness, the cleverness. Why would the boss do this? Well, in this interpretation, the manager has outsmarted the boss. and he's put him in a very difficult situation. The boss is receiving public praise for reducing these debts. So he's not going to then say, actually, that was someone else doing that. Here, the debts are back in. Especially not in the honour-shame society. After the public knowledge of these debts being reduced, the boss kind of fakes a smile and says, well played. So maybe this is a story about undeserved grace for our selfish, dishonest and proud manager. The fact that the manager wasn't dismissed immediately and wasn't publicly shamed for whatever he was accused of, doesn't even seem to then be rebuked for making things worse than they already were for the boss. So in this interpretation, I'm suggesting that it's not well, here's what you should do. And actually, I hope you realise that all the stories in the Bible are not, here's what you should do. They're not all stories of people to copy. Some of them are stories of, well, don't try that because you saw how that went. So maybe this is one that warns us against the dishonest behaviour of the manager. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. People of the world understand how the world works and they use it to their advantage. They understand culture and customs and they play the game and they try to win. So why don't we do that in the kingdom of God? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Lots of things are like, I think we see nutrition and fitness. We know exactly what the best thing to do is, but actually making it a top priority is the hard part, especially when we're just in the realities of day-to-day life. So the selfish, dishonest and proud manager, if you read it that way, what do you like? What's challenging? Is there an invitation in there for you? Give you a couple more minutes to try that one out. Alan's going to come and read our third go of this, and then I'll frame up our third interpretation. And he needs a mic.
So, the New International Version. Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man. Just hold it closer. Thank you. Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. And he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he'd acted shrewdly. For the people of this world who are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use your worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you'll be welcome into eternal dwellings. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this, and they were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value is highly detestable in God's sight.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, you can see the blanks there of what I'm suggesting for our third interpretation. This is the parable of... I think I was just waiting if someone's going to call something out and give it a go. You don't have to. No, they're hard, aren't they? This one is the manager who monkey wrenches the system. So far, I think, largely, in our other two interpretations, we've sort of taken the side of the boss, in a sense, because capitalism is our culture, the water that we all swim in, so much so that it's hard to consciously question it every time we do anything. And so when we take the capitalism lens to the reading, that's where we come out with something that's quite tricky and unintelligible initially. For this interpretation, I draw on a lot of the work of Ched Myers, who is a guy that does stuff. I don't know what his title is. I think he would go by theologian, but you can look him up. He does a lot of... You'll see what sort of things he does. So, in this interpretation, we notice that rich man is not something that you want to be called in the Gospel of Luke. And that was the start of this one, that there was a rich man. The boss was called a rich man. So in Luke 12, there's a rich fool that says, I need a bigger barn to store all my wheat, and then dies and is called a fool by God. In Luke 16, the one just following this, with Lazarus, it's a rich man that doesn't help Lazarus at the gates of the city. And the rich man dies and ends up in the place of eternal punishment. In Luke 18, the rich ruler couldn't inherit eternal life because of his possessions. In Luke 19, Zacchaeus is a rich man, and he's commended as soon as he stops being so rich. So you don't want to be a rich man in Luke. How rich was this man? Well, the olive oil alone was quite possibly about 3 years of an average salary. The wheat might have been 8 to 9 years of an average salary. Might be more than 20 times the size of a family farm. So it could actually be that there's a whole community, a whole village that's in debt to this rich man. That scale is helpful for us to think through. And of course, in the culture, according to the Deuteronomic laws, charging interest was illegal. So if you were someone that had debts. No? How do I say that? That people had debts. Someone help me out? Owed something. No, but the other one. Who's the... You were owed. Yep, that'll do. If you were owed something, then you were, by the law of God, forbidden from charging interest. You're in a delicate situation, because obviously there would be a lot of temptation to use that position as a position of power. So there's potentially a corrupt system going on here. It says that the manager is accused, and that word accused in Greek, it suggests a hostility towards that manager. So who has done the accusing? We don't find that out, but perhaps it's another manager that's trying to backstab this one for the job. So it could be quite a difficult environment, quite a corrupt system in which this manager is working. And maybe if you're part of that culture, it was a really straightforward parable. Maybe it wasn't so tricky for the first hearers. Maybe that's just because of the lenses and the distance that we have from that culture and the way that capitalism has engulfed our world. Maybe this parable, for our third interpretation, is just simply teaching that managers who are not part of the upper class but interface with it in their work, maybe they should just play a role in decreasing the gap between the rich and the poor that the Old Testament laws don't want to have, that gap. The word squandering that appears we kind of have that word as a bad thing. Not yet, Mag, for that one. That'll confuse people. Squandering is kind of a reckless wasting, but actually the word squandering is most like the word scattering for us. So maybe scattering wealth around isn't actually a bad thing. Why have it accumulate in just some places if the manager is part of scattering it around? Perhaps that's where some of the commending comes from. In our world, where there's ever increasing difference between those who have and who not, because of the system that we're all up to our necks in. Whether we want to or not, we participate in the global economy. We all purchase things. We all have some sort of money that in some way is in a commercial bank or in superannuation, and we all vote with our dollars. In a very far from perfect system, it's not an ideal democracy that we do that voting in, with restricted choices and lies and confusing messages the whole way along the way. But we do all get to vote in that system. I've read a lot and listened a lot, and with Jonathan Cornford, who I know some of you know, he's up in Bendigo these days and writes all sorts of pieces about how the Bible interfaces and interacts and instructs the day-to-day things that we do, especially with our money, because it's one of the biggest levers that we each have to pull on how the world works. And he says, along with the ethical shopping guide, which he's been a little bit involved with, they talk about our dollar being our vote. Every time I spend $1, it's a message that sort of swims upstream somewhere through all sorts of different systems around the world, and my dollar vote goes and says, make another one of them, or do that thing again. Or actually, do that thing and a half again, because demand's increasing. So what do we do with our votes? Now we can put up that slide. Thanks, Marg. This comes from Ferdinand Tönnies, 150 years ago. A German sociologist and economist and philosopher. And it's just simply the idea of community and capitalist society being in tension with each other. Community in the green is everything that holds human relationships together, despite everything that would pull them apart. So community is things like creation or consumption within the context of relationship and community, knowing the people that are involved as we participate in spending our money. Capitalist society in the blue is everything that would pull human relationships apart despite all that holds them together. Self-serve checkouts might be one of those, although I note that in Europe, where they had them first, they're pulling them out again because people don't want them. So I don't know about self-service checkouts. Working instead of family time. Trying to keep up with some imagined competition of living standards. Bailing out the banks and executives rather than those that suffer from loans that go bad. Allowing money to flow to the cheapest and most efficient running multinationals that have growing profits for the owners rather than for the workers. That's the capitalist society. And so I want to suggest, at least while I stand over here at interpretation number 3, that we as people of faith and people that want to be instructed by the Bible need to be doing everything we can to keep pulling towards the green, to community, to things that hold human relationships together despite everything that wants to pull them apart. So in this interpretation, our manager is defective in the sense that he defects against a capitalist economy and tries to scatter more wealth. He monkey wrenches the system. He writes off the boss's profit margin. It's a bit like a little ad hoc jubilee, a release of debts. And that's why the Pharisees, like the older brother in the prodigal son, are aghast, because it's not how things are meant to work. But maybe we can see this as a win-win-win. The rich man gets some honour, which might have been lacking for him. The manager makes friends who are going to help him when he's out of work. and the indebted get some release from their debts. Perhaps that's why he's commended. I'm not standing here giving legal advice. That's all I'll say. But how can we defect and move towards the green community in new and creative ways? So there's 3 alternatives. I'll let you discuss that one in a moment, but I hope that the text, not me, has spoken to you this morning, that you can wrestle with this, that you can draw some sort of conclusion, whatever that looks like for you today. Money is not morally neutral. So how can we invest it where there are relationships rather than profit? So the manager that monkey wrenches the system, what do you like about that? What's challenging? And any conclusions that you can draw and write onto your money for a couple of minutes?